Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilma. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amma ba'd. This is the second lesson, inshallah, in the explanation of Aqeedatu Waasitiyyah. And for those of you who weren't here for the previous lesson, it's very important that you listen to the first lesson, which might be the most important lesson in the whole book, because it sets out the fundamental principles from which we will understand what comes later. So it's very important that everyone listens to that lesson and understands it well. And today, inshallah, we'll be continuing where we left off. So we'll be continuing from the first section, where the muallif says, قال المؤلف رحمه الله الجمع بين النفي والإثبات في وصفه تعالى. When we as Ahlul Sunnah, when we speak about Allah and we describe Him by what He described Himself and by what the Prophet ﷺ described Him with, the way of Ahlul Sunnah is that we combine between al-nafi wal-ithbat, that we combine between affirming that which Allah has affirmed for Himself and negating that which Allah has negated from Himself. And this is the way of the Quran, as we've already mentioned the ayah before. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. There is nothing like Allah, and He is the all-hearing, all-seeing. So, in order to properly glorify Allah and in order to affirm for Him what He has affirmed for Himself, then this is the way which is the correct methodology. And generally speaking, when it comes to al-nafi wal-ithbat, affirming and negating, the affirmation in the names and attributes of Allah is mufassal, it's detailed. So if you look at the names and attributes of Allah has said, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. Allah has the great names, so call Him upon with those names. And the names mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah are plentiful, and they all have meanings with them. And the names of attributes of Allah, what we understand from the names of Allah are three forms of understanding, three meanings which are in the names of Allah, dalalat al-asma. So generally speaking, the names of Allah, they serve two purposes. They are a'lam and awsaf. The names of Allah are a'lam, the plural of alam, and awsaf. So al-alam or al-a'lam, meaning that they are names which refer to Allah, just as how Zayd refers to a person and Fatima refers to a person. So the names of Allah are a'lam, in the sense that they refer to Allah's essence, to His dhat. And they are awsaf as well, they are also attributes, because when you look at all of the names of Allah, they all contain within them the meaning of an attribute. So Allah is Ar-Rahman, this has the attribute of Rahmah, mercy. He is Ar-Rahim, also has the attribute of mercy. He is also Al-Qadir, the attribute of Qudra, ability, and Al-Qawi, the one who has strength, and so on. All of the names of attributes of Allah, all the names of Allah, they all serve to be also awsaf, descriptions of Allah. So the names of Allah, they all serve two purposes: al-alamiyah, to be names to refer to Allah with, and awsaf, descriptions of Allah. Then specifically each name, we understand from it three things, and these are in Arabic called dalalat, the information which is understood from a text. They are dalala, at-tadabuk, wal-mutabaqa, and at-tadammun, and al-iltizam. Dalalat al-mutabaqa means for the word to be giving the exact meaning of the thing. Let's give an example in terms of normal things. So if I say house, the word house, it refers to this building which has foundations and walls and windows and so on. So when the word is used to refer to the whole house, this is dalala of tatabuq. Mutabaqa yani that it's equal to it, that it can be placed on it, like tabaqa ala shay. So the names of Allah, each name refers to Allah as a whole. The second dalala, what we understand from names of Allah is at-tadammun, what's included in the meaning. So for example, when we speak about the house, if I say that this is a house, you know that it has walls, you know that it has a foundation, that it has a roof. These individual meanings are necessarily understood when I say house. So this meaning being understood from the word is called tadammun. تضمن شيء means to contain something. It's a contained meaning. And the third type is iltizam, something which is known to be necessitated by this word. Now if I know that there's a house, I'm going to know that this house has a shadow, as every other object has. Is the shadow the part of a house, a part of the house? No, it's something which is separate to the house, but it's necessitated by it. So the names of attributes and names of Allah, we understand all three types of dalalat in it. So when we say Allah or Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, all of these names, they all give the same meaning, referring to Allah as a whole, with His names and attributes, Azza wa Jal. So this is dalala of tatabuq. And the dalala of tadammun, the meaning which is contained, is that each name refers to two things. When I say Ar-Rahman, I am referring to the that means essence, the existence of Allah, and I'm also referring to His sifa, His attribute. Right? So every name refers to two things. It refers to Allah as a whole. This is by mutabaqa in Arabic. And it refers by tadammun in terms of what each one contains from the meanings. It refers to the that, to the existence of Allah, and also to an attribute. Every name has tadammun sifa. Every name of Allah contains an attribute. There's not a name of Allah except that it has the meaning of an attribute. So if you say Al-Malik, this has the attribute of Al-Malakut, Al-Mulukiyah. If I say Al-Quddus, has Al-Qadasa, perfection, and so on. So every name has a attribute which is contained within it. And as for iltizam, this is something which is known by necessity, not indicated by the word itself. If I say Allah is Hakim, He has wisdom. So now we're applying it practically. The word, when referring to Allah as a whole, it's talking about Allah. All of the names are. So that's mutabaqa. When it's referring to the attribute of hikmah, of wisdom, this is tadammun, something which is contained within it. And when it's referring to other attributes, if Allah is Hakim, having wisdom, then He must also have knowledge, because it's not possible to have wisdom without having knowledge. So from the name of Al-Hakim, we can also know that Allah has ilm, knowledge. Why? Because this is something which is necessitated by it. This is by iltizam. Another example, if we say, for example, the name, for example, let's say Allah is Al-Muhsin. He does ihsan. Yani He gives things and He does good to His creation. He is one who does good, from Al-Hasan. Al-Ihsan is to do good. So we'd say this name, the first thing we understand from it is that it's referring to Allah as all of the names of Allah are. This is dalal of mutabaqa. The second is the name of Al-Ihsan, of Al-Muhsin, refers to the attribute of ihsan, good, doing good. This is tadammun. And in order for Allah to have the attribute of Al-Ihsan, to do good, that must mean that Allah also has rahmah, mercy, because you do ihsan out of mercy. And He also has Al-Adl, justice, because the one who is not just does not do good, and so on. So these attributes which are understood are from the iltizam. Yes?
So you said if a house has a shadow, so is that the equivalent of saying Allah, if He's wise, and He must also have knowledge?
Yes, that's al-iltizam, the thing which is necessitated, but not part of the word. It's not what the word is referring to in a linguistic sense, but it's something which is necessitated from the meaning of the word. So this is the ithbat. That's why you see the ithbat of Ahlul Sunnah, it's always detailed. And that's the way that it is in the Quran. Allah named Himself with many names. وَالْمَلِكُ الْقُدُّوسُ السَّلَامُ الْمُؤْمِنُ الْمُهَيْمِنُ الْعَزِيزُ الْجَبَّارُ الْمُتَكَبِّرُ. These are all different names with all different attributes which are indicated by them. And we affirm all of these attributes. But when it comes to an-nafi, negation, then there's two principles. The first principle is that an-nafi is normally bil-ijmal. Ijmal means it is generic, general. We say لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. Allah, there's nothing like Him. Do we need to say لَيْسَ الْإِنسان كَمِثْلِ اللَّهِ وَلَيْسَ الْفَرَسْ كَمِثْلِ اللَّهِ وَلَيْسَ الْمَلَكْ كَمِثْلِ اللَّهِ? The humans are not like Allah, and the angels are not like Allah, and animals are not like Allah. We don't need to say this. And this is not a praiseworthy way of speaking about Allah. Allah, He did ijmal when speaking about negation in the Quran. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. But when affirming, he mentioned it in detail. And this is even when you speak about a person. If you're praising a person, do you say to him, you're not ugly, you're not smelly, you're not this, you're not this? That's not praising. So the praising is to say, to affirm attributes of kamal, of perfection. It's not to negate mere imperfections. The mere negation of imperfections isn't within itself a praise. So nahnu nahmadullah, we praise Allah Azza Jal by affirming what He has affirmed for Himself. And that which we do negate from Allah Azza Jal, we negate it because this negation necessitates a praise. So when you say Allah Azza Jal, laysa kamithlihi shay, that there's nothing like Allah, what we are understanding from this is that Allah Azza Jal is greater than everything else. This is al-kamal and al-afdaliyah for Allah Azza Jal. When you say Allah Azza Jal, He la ta'khudhuhu sinatu wa la nawm. He does not sleep, and tiredness do not come upon Allah Azza Jal, do not affect Allah Azza Jal. Why are we saying this? We are saying this, of course, initially because Allah Azza Jal said it, but the reason why Allah Azza Jal mentioned this is to show that He has complete knowledge. That when a person is sleeping, he does not have knowledge and he does not have ability. So this negation, it came for the purpose of affirmation. Every negation, كل نفي في صفات الله يلزم منه إثبات. Every negation, when we speak about Allah Azza Jal, it is also necessitating a form of affirmation of perfection. Why do we say this? Because there are many groups from the different sects, from Muslims rather than them, who they only speak about Allah Azza Jal in ways not befitting of Him. So they say, ليس جوهرا ولا عرضا ولا وليس محايثا ولا مباينا لا داخل العالم ولا خارج العالم وليس في حيز. They say Allah Azza Jal is not like this, is not like this. Allah Azza Jal is not a body. Allah Azza Jal is not an accident. Al-arad, and that's a philosophical term. Allah Azza Jal is not contained. Allah Azza Jal is not this and not this and not this. This way is not a Quranic way of speaking about Allah Azza Jal, and it's not a way befitting of speaking about Him Jalla fil Ula. You got a question?
I wanted so would anyone be sinful in terms of like thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how He might be looking and so on?
Yes, Allah Azza Jalla says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثْلُ الْأَعْلَى وَلَا تَضْرِبُوا لِلَّهِ الْأَمْثَالِ. We cannot, as we mentioned in the previous lesson, we cannot do qiyas of the creation upon Allah. We cannot make an analogy between the creation and the Creator. Everything which we understand and we can perceive is based on the induction which we do from what we see in the creation. So your understanding of everything is based on what you can sense and what you know from al-mabadi al-aqliyya, fundamental knowledge, like opposites cannot combine and that a part is less than a whole. This knowledge is based on our limited frame and our limited set of information which we are basing our conclusions on. So when speaking about Allah Azza Jal, or when thinking about Allah Azza Jal, you have to first realize that Allah Azza Jal is not like anything in the creation, and the rules which we understand in our universe, they don't apply to Allah Azza Jal. Allah Azza Jal is beyond all of that. Allah Azza Jal is Al-Akbar. He is greater than all of that. So trying to do any form of imagination or comparison when speaking about Allah Azza Jal is something which is not possible. So that's why many of the ulama would say, كلما تخيلت عن الله عز وجل فهو على خلاف ذلك. Whatever you imagine about Allah Azza Jal, He is different to that. Whatever you can try imagining, it's not like Allah Azza Jal, because our knowledge is limited, and that's what وما أوتيتم من العلم إلا قليلا says in the Quran. You have not been given from knowledge except for a little amount. And this is in the ayah, the beginning of the ayah says ويسألونك عن الروح قل الروح من أمر ربي وما أوتيتم من العلم إلا قليلا. They ask you about the soul. Say the soul is from the matters of my Lord, and you have not been given from the knowledge except a little amount. A human cannot even understand how his soul works. The soul is something which is beyond our comprehension. And this is one of the two examples which Ibn Taymiyyah gives in At-Tadmuriyah. In his other book, At-Tadmuriyah, he tries explaining why you cannot compare Allah to the creation, or why you cannot understand Allah the way that the creation can be understood. One of those two examples he gave was the example of the soul. The soul is within our bodies. But if the soul is a separate existence, it's not an attribute of ours. The way that your color is, or your skin is, or your life is, because those things follow you. As for the soul, it can be separated from you. When you die, your soul is taken out and it continues to exist while your body dies. So how is it that one two things are in the same place. Two objects are existing in the same place. How is it that the soul, it rises when you sleep? Allah yatawaffa al-anfusa hina mawtiha wallati lam tamut fi manamiha. Well, Allah He takes the souls when their time has came for death, and those who have not died, Allah takes them in their sleep. Your soul goes up into the heavens whilst you're sleeping, and then it comes back down when you wake up, but it's still attached to your body. If you can't even understand how the soul acts, and it's something which is from the creation, so then how can you understand how the creator is? And like we mentioned in the previous lesson, al-kalam في الصفات فرع عن الكلام في الذات. Speaking about the attributes of Allah, it's secondary to speaking about His existence and His essence. So if you can't even understand how Allah's essence is and His existence is, then trying to understand the way that His attributes are is just as impossible. In any case, so now we'll mention what the Mu'allif said here. He said, وَقَدْ دَخَلَ فِي هَذِهِ الْجُمْلَةِ. So from that which is included in the idea of affirming, and both affirming and negating, ما وصف الله به نفسه في سورة الإخلاص. يعني what Allah described Himself with in Surah Al-Ikhlas, قل هو الله أحد, it is also a form or an example of both affirmation and negation. التي تعدل ثلث القرآن. Surah Al-Ikhlas, it says the one which equals a third of the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ said in the Hadith, أيعجز أحدكم أن يقرأ ثلث القرآن. He said to the companions, is one of you unable to read a third of the Quran? They said, وَكَيْفَ ذَلِكَ يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. And how is that? So how do we read a third of the Quran? Oh, he said, أَيَعْجِزُ أَحَدُكُمْ أَنْ يَقْرَأَ ثُلُثَ الْقُرْآنِ فِي لَيْلَةٍ. Is one of you, or any of you, unable to read a third of the Quran every night? And he said, how? They asked the Prophet ﷺ, how is that? He said, فَإِنَّ سُورَةَ الْإِخْلَاصِ تَعْدِلُ ثُلُثَ الْقُرْآنِ. Or in another wording, فَوَاللَّهِ Surah Al-Ikhlas ta'adulu Surah Al-Quran. That this surah, Surah Al-Ikhlas, it is equal to 1/3 of the Quran. And then the ulama have khilaf, they have different opinions. What does it mean that this surah is a third of the Quran? There are mainly two opinions. The first opinion is that this surah, it has the virtue and the reward of a third of the Quran. So if you read Surah Al-Ikhlas, it's as if you have gotten the reward for reading a third of the Quran. That's one opinion. The second opinion is that the meaning here is that the meanings contained within Surah Al-Ikhlas, they make up a third of the meanings contained within the Quran. Because the Quran, it mainly has three types of ayat, three meanings in the ayat. The first is al-ahkam. The Quran speaks about rulings. يَسَأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ. They ask you about alcohol and gambling. يَسَأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيضِ. They ask you about menstruation. And other ayat about different ahkam, rulings in the Sharia. That's 1/3 of the Quran in terms of meanings. The other third is qisas, stories of the prophets, and stories of the Day of Judgment and of previous nations, and also stories which occurred during the life of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is the second third of the Quran. And the third, it is speaking about Allah Jal. Al-kalam an illah wa dhatillah. Speaking about Allah Jal and His sifat and His attributes. A third of the Quran speaks about Allah Jal. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْحَكِيمُ وَهُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْخَبِيرُ. إِنَّ اللَّهُ هُوَ الرَّزَّاقُ ذُو الْقُوَّةِ الْمَتِينُ. All of these ayat, they all speak about Allah Jal. So Surah Al-Ikhlas, it deals solely about the attributes of Allah Jal. So in its meaning, it is 1/3 of the meaning of the Quran. And both these opinions aren't contradictory. This is ikhtilaf at-tanawwu', meaning these two opinions, they're not contradictory, so you can affirm both meanings, that this surah, it equals a third of the Quran, both in terms of its reward and also in terms of its meanings. So it says, يقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد. Say, Ya Muhammad, this is a command to the Prophet ﷺ. And then every command, the general principle is that any command to the Prophet ﷺ is also a command to his nation after him, unless there's an evidence to show that this command is specific to the Prophet ﷺ. So it's قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say that He is Allah, and Allah is one. هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. And Ahad, in Arabic you can say wahid and you can say ahad. Wahid means one. singular. And ahad also means one, but it is يعني للمبالغة في الوحدانية. يعني it's emphasizing and it's exaggerating in being just one. So if there's for example several things, you can say هذا واحد وهذا واحد وهذا واحد. This is one and this is one and this is one. But there's still more than one thing, right? If I had 3 books, this book is wahid, one book, and this is another book, and this is another book. Each one is wahid. But are any of them ahad? No, because there are other amthal. There are those which are similar to it. But when you say ahad, meaning that it's one and there's nothing like it. The Allah Jal, He is one in all senses, that there is nothing like Allah Jal in His existence nor in His names and attributes. It says Allahu Samad. Allah is As-Samad. And As-Samad, it's an attribute of Allah Jal, which has many meanings. And it's one of the attributes which are very essential when understanding Allah Jal and His essence and His attributes as how He has affirmed for Himself. So from the meanings of As-Samad is that it is As-Sayyid alladhi yusmad ilayhi hawaijun nas. It is the Lord and the King to whom the people they lift up their needs. So like for example, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, of course this is an example, not that Allah is exactly like that, but للتقريب, as just to make a person understand. When there's a king or a leader of a land and everyone comes and requires help from them and requires assistance from that king. So that's from the meanings of As-Samad, that everything is reliant upon Allah, and everything, all of the creation, they call upon Allah and seek His assistance. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We only seek help from you, Allah. The other meaning of As-Samad, and this is the one which is narrated from Ibn Abbas and most of the Salaf, they would say As-Samad alladhi la jawfa lahu. As-Samad, it means the one which isn't hollow. It doesn't have a jawf. Jawf means insides, like hollow. Allah is not hollow. This is narrated from Ibn Abbas and others of the Sahaba and Tabi'een. So what does this mean, that Allah la jawfa lahu? This means many things. The first thing is, it means that Allah is not requiring of food or drink or any of those needs of the humans, the ways that humans need. Allah is qa'im bi nafsihi. Allah is self-sufficient, not needing of anything from the creation. And it also means, as narrated from some of the Salaf, I believe Al-Hasan al-Basri, if I remember correctly, he said, الَّذِي لَا جَوْفَ لَهُ فَلَا يَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ شَيْءٍ وَلَا يَدْخُلُ فِيهِ شَيْءٍ. Nothing exits from Allah and nothing enters into Allah. Allah, His existence is separate from the creation and it is self-sufficient. If something is hollow, that means there's space in it, things can go in. But Allah is not hollow, meaning nothing from the creation can exist within Allah, and Allah does not exist within the creation. And this is a refutation of those groups who say that Allah is everywhere. Al-Hululiyah. Groups which say Allah is everywhere are 2 types. Those who believe in Wahdatul Wujud, meaning that everything is part of Allah, the way that Ibn Arabi al-Ta'i and Ibn Sab'in, some misguided callers used to believe, and also the way that Sikhs believe. Sikhism, they say that Allah is one, but they don't mean that Allah is one separate from the creation. They say everything is part of Allah. This is Wahdatul Wujud, and it's disbelief. The other belief is Al-Hululiyah, Al-Hulul, that Allah is everywhere, in all places, within the creation and outside of the creation. And this belief is refuted by the name of Allah, As-Samad. Nothing is contained within Allah, and Allah is not contained within anything. And nothing separates from Allah, and nothing is added to Him. So if anyone says that something is created from Allah, the way that like the Christians say that وَقَالَتِ النَّصَارَى الْمَسِيحُ ibn Allah, that they said that Isa alayhi salam is the son of Allah, meaning that he is from Allah. This is something which is impossible, and Allah has affirmed that He is As-Samad. And what it also means is that Allah Azza wa Jal, He is separate from the creation. And this is what we believe as Ahlul Sunnah. We believe that Allah Azza wa Jal is above all creation and above the throne, and not contained within anything. Allah is not contained within in a physical place. Rather, Allah is above all of the universe and of all creation. So these are some of the meanings of the name of As-Samad. Why is this ayah speaking about this, or why is the surah speaking about this generally? The sabab al-nuzul, the reason why why Surah Al-Ikhlas was revealed, was because the mushrikeen, the polytheists of Quraysh and of the Arabs, they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said to him, "Insib lana rabbak." Tell us the lineage of your Lord. And some narrations they say, "Hal huwa min fidda, hal huwa min dhahab." They asked, how is Allah like? Is he made of gold? Is he made of silver? Does he have a lineage? Meaning, was he born, or does he have children? Waliyadhu billah. Of course, all of this is negated. Ahad. Allah Ajal, lam yalid, meaning he has not given birth. He does not have a child. Walam yulad, and he was also not born. So as for lam yalid, this is nafyul walad, negating a child from Allah Ajal. And this is mentioned in many places in the Quran. It says, أَنَّا يَكُنْ لَهُ وَلَدٌ وَلَمْ تَكُنْ لَهُ صَاحِبَةٌ. It says in the Quran, how can Allah Azza have a child when he does not have a sahibah, he does not have a partner? The reason that affirming a child for Allah Azza is something which is a lie upon Allah Azza, as it says in the Quran, تَكَادُ السَّمَاوَاتُ يَتَفَطَّرْنَ مِنْ فَوْقِهِمْ يَكَادُ السَّمَاوَاتُ يَتَفَطَّرْنَ مِنْ فَوْقِهِمْ. And it also says in the Quran, in Surah Maryam, لقد جئتم شيئا إدا تكاد السماوات يتفطرن منه وتنشق الأرض وتخر الجبال هدا أن دعوا للرحمن ولدا وما كان للرحمن أن يكون له ولد وما ينبغي للرحمن أن يكون له ولدا. It says in Surah Maryam that the heavens are almost breaking apart, and the earth is splitting, and the mountains become crushed because of their statements that they ascribe to Allah a child. Now, ascribing a child to Allah, it means one thing, that Allah, he is in requirement, in need of a child, the way that a father is in need of their child, or that Allah became completed by the child, which is all false. Allah is eternally complete and he does not require anything from the creation. Also, it would mean that if a person has a child, then that child has to be from the jins, from the type which that father is from. The parents and the child are from the same species. A human gives birth to a human, so the child has the same attributes as how the parents do. So if you were to affirm a child for Allah, that would mean that you are affirming an illah, you are affirming a deity like Allah. And we already mentioned that Allahu Ahad, He is one, there's nothing like Him. So therefore, affirming a child for Allah is a lie upon Him. And also it says in the ayah which I mentioned earlier, that if you were to affirm a child for Allah, you would affirm, a literal child in the biological sense, you would affirm that Allah has a partner, which is also affirming more than one khaliq, one creator, one deity. And Allah is Ahad. So all of this is in negation, in opposition to what Allah has mentioned about Himself. And it says, وَلَمْ يُولَدْ, and Allah was also not born. So the clear meaning, which is zahir, is that Allah, He does not have parents for the same reason that He does not have children. But another meaning which is understood also, which is mutadammin, which is contained within this statement, is that Allah lam yasbiqhu adam. Allah, there was never a time when He did not exist. He is a necessary existence. Allah has always existed, and it's not possible for Him to have not existed, or for Him to not exist. He is an eternal existence and the reason for all other things existing. So when you say walam yulad, He was not born, but also there was never a time that Allah did not exist, the way that a child comes into existence after having been nothingness. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ, and لَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ أَحَدٌ كُفُوًا, that's one of the i'rab of the ayah. There's different ways how the ayah can be understood, but this would mean is that nothing, لَمْ يَكُنْ أَحَدٌ لَهُ كُفُوًا, no one is for him a kuf. And al-kuf, we mentioned in the previous lesson, is al-mukafi, an equal. There's no one who is equal to Allah Azza Jal in any sense. Allah Azza Jal is completely different to the creation and completely greater than the creation in all senses. So Allah Azza Jal does not have the beginning of these ayat, which we mentioned that Allah is one and He is as-samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad. These are all doing nafyu khasa'is al-khalq anillah, negating the special qualities of the creation from Allah. Nothing which is specific to the creation and restricted to the creation is applicable to Allah. So things which are min khasa'is al-makhluq, things which are specific to the creation, such as them being born, such as them having parents, such as them being hollow, all of these such things are negated from Allah. And this ayah is negating all of the khasa'is of Allah, all of the specific attributes of Allah from the creation. Nothing in the creation can be like Allah. Just as how we mentioned that Allah is as-samad, none of the creation can be as-samad. Just as how we said Allah is lam yalid wa lam yulad, that none of the creation can also be lam yalid wa lam yulad. Ila akhirih. The next he says, وَمَا وَصَفَ بِهِ نَفْسَهُ فِي أَعْظَمِ آيَةٍ فِي كِتَابِهِ حَيْثُ يَقُولُ. And also this way of Ahlul Sunnah, which is shown by affirmation and negation, is also shown in the greatest ayah in the Quran, وَمَا وَصَفَ بِهِ نَفْسَهُ, and what he described himself with, فِي أَعْظَمِ آيَةٍ, in the greatest ayah, فِي كِتَابِهِ, in his book, which is ayat al-Kursi, as mentioned in the hadith of Ubay ibn Ka'b, when the Prophet said to him, كما قال أتدري ما أعظم آية في القرآن, he said, do you know what is the greatest ayah in the Quran? He said, Allah wa Rasuluhu alam, Allah and his messenger alayhi salatu wasalam know best. Then he asked him again, and then Ubay said, لعله آية الكرسي, perhaps it is آية الكرسي. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hit him on his chest as affirmation, as showing that he was correct, and he said, ليهنأ لك العلم أبا المنذر. Knowledge will be, or may knowledge be easy for you, and hani'an, as it says in the Arabic, hani'an mari'an, something which you take easily and something which is enjoyable for you. Abu al-Mundhir, that's the kunya of Ubay ibn Ka'b. So the ayah says, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. Allah, la ilaha illa huwa. There's no deity, there's no one worthy of worship except him. When you say la ilaha illallah, or la ilaha illahu, what might seem apparent is that it's saying there's no deity or no God except Allah. But we know that there are aliha, things which are worshipped besides Allah, and ilah means something which is worshipped. So what is the reason for this? What some of the ulama mentioned is that al-ma'doom shar'an kal-ma'doom hissan. Something which is negated, not existing in the deen, in the sharia, it's as if it doesn't exist in reality. So when Allah just said that there is no ilah, yani shar'an, there's no legislated one to be worshipped besides him, then it's as if there's no ilah literally. Because if no one is deserving to be worshipped, then this worship which is being directed towards them is as if it doesn't exist. It's not given any consideration. So that's one of the understandings of why la ilaha illallah. It means that there's no one who is worthy of worship in truth except Allah, even though the apparent wording is that there's no one who is an ilah, who is a god or a deity besides Allah, meaning there are no true gods, because in the sharia the only deen which is given consideration is Islam. In the deen indallahi al-Islam, indeed the religion with Allah which is given consideration, which is correct, is Islam. So it says Allahu la ilaha illahu al-hayyul qayyum. Al-hayy, it is from the names of Allah, the ever living, and this is affirming the attribute of al-haya, of life for Allah, that Allah He is living. And we also know this by aql, by intellect, because if Allah was not living, then that would mean if you don't affirm haya, then you would be affirming maut, death. If something is not living, then it is dead. So of course death is something which is not befitting of Allah. So He is al-hayy, and He has the sifa of haya. And it's not just His mere existence. Some of the groups such as the Mu'tazila say that Allah's life, His attribute of haya, is just His mere existence, His wujud. We say no, Allah is mawjud, He exists, but He's also living. Just how there are things which exist but are dead, so existence and life are not the same. Rather, Allah is existing, mawjud, and He is also al-hayy, He is living. Al-qayyum, Allah is al-qayyum. And al-qayyum, it means al-qaim bi nafsihi walladhi yaqumu bihi ghayruhu. Allah He is al-qaim bi nafsihi, al-qayyum. Al-qayyum, it comes from the word qaim, to be standing, meaning Allah is al-qaim bi nafsi. Allah exists by himself. He is not in need of anyone else. He is the self-sufficient. That is one of the meanings of al-qayyum, that Allah is self-sufficient, not relying upon anything or anyone besides him. And he is يَقُومُ بِهِ غَيْرُهُ وَالَّذِي يَقُومُ بِهِ غَيْرُهُ. Yani everything else is muftaqir, is in need of Allah in order to exist. Nothing can exist if Allah is not created. Everything is reliant upon Allah in its existence. But Allah is not reliant upon anyone. So these are the two meanings of Al-Qayyum. And these two names, Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum, Ibn Al-Qayyim and other ulama say that these two names are Madaru Sifatillah. All of the attributes of Allah, they go back to these two names, Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. That these two names contain within them, by their lawazim, by what they necessitate, all of the names and attributes of Allah. And that's why there's khilaf between the ulama. What is Ismullah al-Azam? Allah has a name which is the greatest name, his greatest name. As mentioned in the Hadith, the greatest name is Alladhi idha du'iya bihi ajab. When Allah is called with this name, he accepts the dua. So some of the ulama say that the greatest name of Allah is Allah. This is the Ismullah al-Azam. And others, such as the opinion of Ibn al-Qayyim, is that the greatest name is Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. These two together. That this is the greatest name. Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. And there's a hadith which suggests that. He says after that, Allah says in the Quran after that, لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Neither sinah, which is tiredness, to be nausy, to be feeling drowsy. Drowsiness does not overcome Allah, neither does an-nawm, sleep. Allah, He is free and above all drowsiness or sleep. So going back to what we mentioned earlier, this negation here of negating sleep and negating drowsiness, it also contains within it a meaning of affirmation. If Allah is not described as having an-nawm, as having sleep or drowsiness, that means Allah is always qadir, is always able. The person who is sleeping becomes unable. They are limited by their sleep, and they also become they have dhuhul, they are unaware of things which occur around them. But as for Allah, لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Allah is always aware, He's always raqib, always watching, and is aware of His creation. He's khabir, and He's always al-qadir, always capable, and has complete strength. So this is the meaning in لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. For Him is that which is in the heavens and the earth. Allah is the one who to Him belongs everything in the universe. And the lam here is al-istihqaq, or at-tamlik, al-milk. Allah He owns everything. Everything is His, is under His ownership, because He is al-malik and al-malik. And also it means al-istihqaq, that Allah is deserving of everything. Nothing which is within the universe is of property or of deserving for other than Him. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. Who is the one who intercedes, intercedes for, not for Him, but intercedes to Him. Who is the one who intercedes to Him for someone else? إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ, except by His permission. This is istifham inkari. It's in the form of question, but it's rhetorical. Meaning, who is the one who is able to intercede in front of Allah without His permission? This is negating of a shafa'ah, of intercession from the creation, except by the permission of Allah. Any intercession which occurs in the Day of Judgment, such as the Muslims interceding for one another, or the Prophets, or our Prophet ﷺ interceding for his ummah and for the Muslims, and also Shafa'a al-Kubra, interceding for the beginning of the judgment, on the Day of Judgment. All of these intercessions which occur are by the permission of Allah. So for an intercession to occur, it requires two conditions. One, idhnullahi lishafi', for Allah to give permission to the one who is doing the interceding. And the second is ridallahi an al-mashfu' lahu, for Allah to be pleased with the one that the intercession is being done for. If Allah does not want this person to be interceded for, then there will be no intercession, because he has not willed it. And we will speak about Shafa'a inshallah when we speak about the Day of Judgment, which is towards the end of the book. It says, يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُم. He knows of that which is بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ, in front of them, and that which is behind them. Both in a literal sense, that Allah knows of everything which encompasses you, and also in terms of time, Allah knows that which is coming up and that which has preceded. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ, and وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ, they do not encompass anything from His knowledge, إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ, except that which He wills. So the knowledge of the creation is that which Allah has willed them to know. All of their knowledge is rizq, it's provision from Allah. Allah is the one who has given them, وَهَبَهُمْ الْعِلْمِ, is the one who has given them this knowledge. So they do not know anything from the knowledge of Allah except by His permission. And this is also relating to ilm al-ghayb, which we will speak about later. And then it says, وَسِعَ كُرْسِيهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. His kursi has encompassed, or is it's spacious enough, or it's bigger than السماوات والأرض, the heavens and the earth. Allah has a kursi and He has an arsh. So kursi, it is, as mentioned by Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, it is موضع قدمي الرحمن. It is the place where Allah places his qadamain, His feet, of course in a way which is befitting for Him, not in the way of the creation. So that is the tafsir given by Abdullah ibn Abbas, the Sahabi. And as for Al-Arsh, then Al-Arsh is a separate creation of Allah, which is greater than that. There's a hadith which mentions that the heavens and the earth, compared to the kursi, are like a ring in the desert. So if you compare the size between a ring and the desert, that's how big the kursi is compared to the heavens and the earth. And the kursi, compared to the arsh of Allah, is like a ring in the desert. That's how big of a difference there is between the arsh and the kursi. وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا. And nothing, the hifz, Allah's preservation and protection of the heavens and the earth, do not tire Him, do not weaken Him. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. And He is Al-Ali, the most high, Al-Azim, the most great. And Ulu Allah Azza Jal, His highness is of three types: Ulu al-Qadr, and Ulu al-Qahr, and Ulu al-Dhat. Allah Azza Jal is most high and all high in terms of His Qadr, His greatness, in terms of His Sharaf, and His status. And He is also most high in terms of Al-Qahr, in terms of His power. Allah Azza Jal is overpowers all of the creation. Everything is under His power. And Allah Azza Jal is most high in terms of His Dhat, in terms of His existence and His essence. Allah Azza Jal is above all things, all creation. So these are the three types of Ulu, which Ahlul Sunnah affirm. Wal-Azim, the most great. This is affirming the sifah of Azamah, of greatness for Allah Azza Jal. Then he says, وَمَعْنَا. So this is now going back to the statements of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah. He says, وَمَعْنَا لَا يَؤُودُهُ أي لَا يُكْرِثُهُ وَلَا يُثْقِلُهُ. And the meaning of لَا يَؤُودُهُ, when it says in the ayah, وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا, it is لَا يُكْرِثُهُ وَلَا يُثْقِلُهُ, that it does not weaken or tire Allah Azza Jal. Allah Azza Jal does not become tired or weakened by maintaining or creating the heavens and earth. It says in the Quran, وَمَا مَسَّنَا مِن لُغُوبٍ, that Allah Azza Jal, when He created the heavens and earth, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ فِي سِتَّةِ أَيَّامٍ وَمَا مَسَّنَا مِن لُغُوبٍ. We created the heavens and earth in 6 days, and we did not, tiredness or weakness did not touch us. This is speaking about Allah Azza Jal, but the plural pronoun is used in the Arabic language للتعظيم, for greatness. So Allah Azza Jal, He did not become tired from creation, as opposed to what the Jews and the Christians say. They say that Allah Azza Jal rested on the 7th day, and this is something which He has negated in the Quran. Then he says, وَلِهَذَا كَانَ مَنْ قَرَأَ هَذِهِ الْآيَةِ فِي لَيْلَةٍ لَمْ يَزَلْ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ اللَّهِ حَافِظٌ وَلَا يَقْرُبُ شَيْطَانٌ حَتَّى يُصْبِحْ. لا يقربه شيطان حتى يصبح. It says, and because of this, because of this ayah being the greatest ayah, and because of what it contains from the meanings referring to Allah and His greatness and His attributes, because of this virtue, this ayah has the benefit that the person who reads it in the night, Allah will cause them to be protected by this ayah, and no harm will reach them in the night which they read this ayah in, and the shaitan does not come close to them until they wake up, as mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So why is this ayah, why is Ayatul Kursi the greatest ayah? It's because the meanings contained within it are the greatest of meanings. Because أشرف العلم هو العلم عن الله. The greatest of all knowledge is to know about Allah, and the greatest of all things is Allah. So because this ayah speaks in such detail about Allah and His greatness and His attributes, combining between both nafi and ithbat, affirmation and negation, this is why this ayah is the greatest ayah in the Quran. As for the greatest surah, chapter, it is Surah Al-Fatiha. طيب, after that, with the second section now is going to be speaking about al-jam' bayna uluwihi wa qurbihi wa azaliyatihi wa abadiyatihi. That we as Ahl Sunnah, we affirm and we combine between the affirmation of both His ulu, His highness in a literal sense, as well as His qurb, His closeness, and His azaliyah and His abadiyah. Azaliyah meaning that He has eternally existed into the past, and abadiyah meaning that He eternally exists into the future. And this is shown from the ayah وَقَوْلُهُ سُبْحَانَهُ, and His statement, Allah's statement in the Quran, where He says هُوَ الْأَوَّلُ وَالْآخِرُ وَالظَّاهِرُ وَالْبَاطِنُ وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. That He is al-awwal, the first, and He is al-akhir, the last, and He is al-zahir, the apparent and the manifest, and He is al-batin, the close, and the al-batin is someone who is very close to you. Like the word bitana in Arabic has two meanings. It can mean a blanket, and also means the people who hang around with you. That's your bitana, because they're very close to you. And these names have been explained by the Prophet ﷺ in the Hadith. He says, أنت الأول فليس قبلك شيء وأنت الآخر فليس بعدك شيء وأنت الظاهر فليس فوقك شيء وأنت الباطن فليس دونك شيء. The Prophet ﷺ said about Allah in this dua, أنت الأول, you are the first, فليس قبلك شيء, so there's nothing before you. وأنت الآخر, and you are the last, so there's nothing after you. وأنت الظاهر, and you are الظاهر, the manifest, the apparent. فليس فوقك شيء, so there's nothing above you. وأنت الباطن, and you are الباطن, so there's nothing دونك, وليس دونك شيء, there's nothing before you in terms of closeness to the creation. So as for the name of Al-Awwal, Allah is the first, because we have already mentioned that Allah has always existed, and that He lam yulad, as we mentioned in Surah Al-Ikhlas, there was never a time which Allah did not exist. So He is Al-Awwal, and Allah He is described, or He is said to be Qadim. Now there's a difference between the names and attributes of Allah and the descriptions of Allah mentioned in the Quran Sunnah, and between informing about Allah. There's a difference between al-wasf and al-ikhbar. When we describe Allah, we only describe Him with those attributes which have been mentioned in the Quran Sunnah. But when we speak about Allah, when we inform about Allah through meanings which we understand from the Quran and Sunnah, this ikhbar, this information, doesn't have to necessarily be using the exact words in the Quran and Sunnah, as long as the meaning is within them. So there's a difference between, if you say Allah, His name is Al-Qadim, that's not correct. There's no name of Allah which is Al-Qadim, the eternal. But if you say Allah is Qadim, He is eternal, always existing, not created, then this meaning is correct. So this is called ikhbar. And ikhbar, it's permissible to do so, even if you're not using the exact words which are in the Quran and Sunnah, as long as the meaning is the correct meaning. But as for when it comes to the names and attributes, when you say Allah has the attribute of this, or He has the name of this, that has to be based on what has been shown in Revelation. So Allah is Al-Awwal, He is the first, and He is Al-Qadim, meaning He has always existed, and it's not possible for Allah to not exist. As for everything else in the universe, it is hadith, occurring after it had not occurred. Meaning everything else is created, makhluk, exists after it had been non-existent. This is not something which some of the groups agree on. The falasifa, some of the philosophers, such as Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi and Kindi and so on, they say that the universe is eternal. It's eternal, it's in its madda, in its material. And this belief is disbelief, because you are saying that there's something which is alongside Allah in His awaliyah. And we have said that He is al-awwal laysa qablahu shay. There's nothing before Allah, and there's nothing which is eternal. Everything is makhluq, created, except for Allah. And He is al-akhir, and He is the last. So a person might say, but don't we say that heaven and hell, Jannah and Jahannam, they last forever, and people stay in heaven and hell for eternally? Khalidina fiha, they remain in there forever. Yes, but their existence is متوقف على إذن الله وعلى إرادة الله. Their existence is reliant and conditioned by the will of Allah. If Allah had not willed for them to continue to exist, they would not exist. So their wujud, their existence is a possibility, mumkin. They can exist eternally as long as Allah wills. But if Allah had not willed, they would not exist. So the only true one who is al-akhir, laysa ba'dahu shay, the one who is truly existing eternally, is Allah. As for those things which exist eternally, as found in the Quran and Sunnah, such as heaven and hell, and the people who will be in there, then their existence is eternal in terms of time, but it is not eternal in terms of actuality, in essence, because it is reliant. It's reliant upon Allah. But Allah He is not reliant upon anyone. So His abadiyyah, or Him being al-akhir, the last, is in a literal sense, that He is always going to exist, even if the creation were not to exist. As for al-zahir, that Allah is manifest, then this has two meanings. One is that Allah is above the creation, which is shown in the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that He is وَأَنْتَ الظَّاهِرُ فَلَيْسَ فَوْقَكَ شَيْءٍ. There's nothing above Allah. Allah is above all creation, and there's nothing beyond Him. And it also means that Allah is the zahir, that His signs and His ayat, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. We will show them our signs in the horizons and in themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth. So al-zahir also means that Allah He is apparent in that Allah's knowledge of Allah, and affirming His existence is something which is clear, something which everyone knows, and His signs are clear, and the signs of the truthness of the message of Muhammad ﷺ are all clear. This is also a meaning which is contained within the name al-zahir. And al-batin, Allah is al-batin, that He is close to the creation. And Allah's closeness is two types. Allah is close, qurb am, in the general sense. Allah is close to all creation. وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. And we are closer to Him, to a human, than a vein which is in the throat. And this closeness is for all creation. Then there's closeness which is specific to the awliya of Allah, to the allies of Allah, those who Allah is pleased with. Then there's a specific closeness to them. And this closeness is both in meaning and in reality. In meaning that Allah is close through His ability, His qudrah, and His strength, and His knowledge, and His awareness. And that He's raqib, He's mindful and watching of you. And also, in terms of Allah, His that is close to the creation in a way which is befitting of Him. That is something which we cannot comprehend, but it is affirmed in the Quran. And that's why it says, like it says in Surah Al-Najm, ثُمَّ دَنَا فَتَدَلَّى فَكَانَ قَابَ قَوْسَيْنِ وَأَدْنَى. And there are two tafsirs of this ayah from the Sahaba. Aisha radiallahu anha said that this ayah is speaking about Jibreel alayhi salam, that he was close to Allah, that Jibreel was close to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَتَدَلَّى, he became close to him. And the other tafsir, which is tafsir of Ibn Abbas, is that speaking about Allah, that Allah was close when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was risen up into the heavens in Laylatul Isra wal Mi'raj, that he went to Sidratul Muntaha, the last point of the heavens, and then he was close to the closest that anyone is to Allah. So this closeness is in a way that is befitting of Allah. Its howness, its reality, is something which we cannot comprehend. And he says, وَقَوْلُهُ سُبْحَانَهُ, and also it says in the ayah, وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. Allah is all-knowing of all things. And Allah we will speak about the other ayah to speak about knowledge soon. It says, وَهُوَ سُبْحَانَهُ وَقَوْلُهُ سُبْحَانَهُ, and He also said, Allah said, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ, and rely upon Al-Hayy, the ever-living, الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ, the one which does not die. So here, there's again affirmation and negation. Allah affirmed for himself life, that he is ever living. And he also said, الَّذِي لَا يَمُوت, the one who does not die, the one who does not cease to exist. So this is affirming, because an insan, a human, is also hay, living, but its living, its life is limited, and it is imperfect. As for Allah, his life is perfect and unlimited and eternal. That's why he said, الَّذِي لَا يَمُوت, the one who does not die. Continue. Okay, then it says, all of his creation. وَقَوْلُهُ, Allah said, وَهُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْحَكِيمُ, he is Al-Alim, the all-knowing, Al-Hakim, the all-wise. As for the attribute of knowledge, Allah knows of all things, and he knows of all things which are wajib and mumkin and mustahil, all things which are possible and impossible and necessary. Allah has knowledge of all things, and he has knowledge of everything, how, if it was to occur, how it would occur. وَلَوْ رُدُّوا لَعَادُوا لِمَا نُهُوا عَنْهُ, as it says in the Quran, if they were to return, if the people in the hellfire were to be returned to the life, they would go back to doing what they were doing before death. So Allah knows of things, how they would be, even things which are impossible. It says, مَا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ مِنْ وَلَدٍ وَمَا كَانَ مَعَهُ مِنْ إِلَٰهٍ إِذًا لَذَهَبَ كُلُّ إِلَٰهٍ بِمَا خَلَقَ وَلَعَلَى بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Allah has not taken a son for himself, and there is no other deity alongside him. If there was to be another deity alongside him, لَذَهَبَ كُلُّ إِلَٰهٍ بِمَا خَلَقَ, each deity would be separated with their own creation, and they would try to overpower one another. This is something which is impossible. There cannot be another illah, another God alongside Allah. But Allah knows, even if that was to be the case, how it would be. So his knowledge is encompassing of all things without any exception. وَهُوَ الْحَكِيمُ, and he is also Hakim, he also has wisdom. Allah's wisdom is relating to three things. It is al-hikmah, wal-ihkam, wal-hukm. The name of al-Hakim, it indicates three attributes. Al-hikmah, wisdom, and al-ihkam, to be precise and to be perfect in his action of creation, and al-hukm, and in his rulings and laws. So as for al-hikmah, Allah has wisdom, and this means two things. The first thing is that Allah يفعل الأفعال لغايات محمودة. Allah, he does his actions and he causes things to occur for great purposes, for purposes which only he can fully comprehend their greatness and importance. So it says in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, and I have not created humans and jinn except to worship me. This means that the purpose in the creation of humans and jinn is for worship. This is what al-hikmah entails, that everything has a purpose. Everything in the creation has a purpose. That's why it says in the Quran also, إِنَّ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. In the heavens and earth are signs for al-mu'minin, for the believers. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Also says in the Quran, in the creation of the heavens and earth and in the changing of the night and day, there are signs for those who have intellect. Because when you ponder that, you see how Allah has placed everything in its right place. And that's what hikmah means. Hikmah, wisdom, means وَضْعُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ فِي مَوْضِعِهِ, to place everything in its correct place. Or وَضْعُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ فِي مَوْضِعِهِ اللَّائِقْ بِهِ, to place everything in the right place which is befitting of it. So Allah, he does not have abeth in his actions. Abeth means to do something without a purpose. أَيَحْسَبُ الْإِنسَانُ وَيُتْرَكَ السُّدَى, does the human think that he will be left without any purpose? And this is a refutation of those groups such as the deists, who say that we affirm that, there's a creator, he created us, but we don't have any reason. Allah just created us to live, no other purpose. We would say to them, everything you see in the universe, as Allah has said, is a sign. There are signs for those who ponder. Look how Allah created the clouds and the stars and everything is in its precise place. If it were to be any different, then the universe would not be in the stable way that it is. So just as how all of that shows that Allah has wisdom, placing everything in the correct place, then that must mean that his wisdom also necessitates that our creation was for a purpose. How could it be that Allah created everything else for a purpose except for humans? That's not possible. So therefore, Allah has created everything for a purpose, which is shown from the other things which we can observe. So then we would induce that our creation, humans, also exist for a purpose. Then we would ask, what is our purpose? And the way to know that is only from Allah. because He's the one who created us. So then we know through al-wahi, revelation. Allah has explained to us our purpose through revelation. So it's not befitting for Allah to create humans without any purpose. So we must know the purpose that Allah has created us through seeking what He has revealed through the prophets. And that has been explained in the Quran and all of the previous in the previous previous nations, that every prophet came and يعبد الله واجتنبوا الطاغوت, to worship Allah and to leave off the false deities. That's the purpose that every nation, every prophet was sent for. So that is al-hikmah. As for al-ihkam, ihkam means that Allah, His actions are precise. Yani ihkam, if you were to make something, if you were making something or writing something and you make a mistake, then this isn't muhkam. It's not precise. But as for Allah, His actions have ihkam. They are precise and everything is correct. There's no mistake. Allah does not make mistakes. That's what al-ihkam necessitates. And as for al-hukm, and obviously these two things are related, the ihkam indicates the hikmah. The precision in the creation of Allah shows that Allah did so out of wisdom. And as for al-hukm, that Allah, He legislates and He commands, and He has forbade things and obligated things upon the creation. So these are the meanings of the name Al-Hakim. So it says, وَهُوَ الْحَكِيمُ الْخَبِيرُ. Allah is Al-Hakim, as you mentioned, the all-wise, and Al-Khabir. And Al-Khabir is from the word Al-Khibra, which is to have detailed knowledge, have knowledge of the most tiny of things. So a person might know something but doesn't know its complete details. Yani you might be alim, you might know that Zayd is in the masjid, but you might not know when he came, when he will leave. But as for a person who is khabir, means he knows all of the tafasil, all of the details. Al-alimu bil-batin, the one who knows the inner knowledge. That's what al-khabir means. Allah has knowledge of the most precise of all things. There's nothing which is not encompassed by His knowledge. It says, يَعْلَمُ مَا يَلِجُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. He knows that which enters into the earth, وَمَا يَخْرُجُ مِنْهَا, and that which comes out from it, وَمَا يَنزِلُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ, and that which descends from the heavens or from the sky, وَمَا يَعْرُجُ فِيهَا, and that which rises in it. Allah knows all of these things. وَعِنْدَهُ مَفَاتِحُ الْغَيْبِ لَا يَعْلَمُهَا إِلَّا هُ. Another ayah here, affirming Allah's knowledge. He says, عِنْدَهُ مَفَاتِحُ الْغَيْبِ. Allah has knowledge of the keys of the unseen. لَا يَعْلَمُهَا إِلَّا هُ. No one knows of it except Him. وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. And He knows that which is in the ground, in the earth, and that which is in the sea. وَلَا رَطْبٍ وَلَا يَابِسٍ إِلَّا فِي وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَمَا تَسْقُطُ مِنْ وَرَقَةٍ إِلَّا يَعْلَمُهَا. And a leaf does not fall except that Allah knows of it. وَلَا حَبَّةٍ فِي ظُلُمَاتِ الْأَرْضِ. And neither does a seed in the darkness of the earth. وَلَا رَطْبٍ وَلَا يَابِسٍ. Nor is something which is dry or wet, except that it is all in فِي كِتَابٍ مُبِينٍ. All of it has been written by Allah in اللوح المحفوظ. The lawh is the tablet which Allah wrote all things in, all things which are to happen. He wrote before the creation of the universe by 50,000 years. We will speak about it inshallah when we come to Al-Qadr. So what this ayah shows is that Allah has knowledge of all things, and He has written down everything to occur, and that He has knowledge of Mafatih al-Ghayb. Mafatih al-Ghayb has been explained in the Prophet ﷺ, that it is referring to the 5 things mentioned in the end of Surah Al-Luqman. إن الله عنده علم الساعة وينزل إن الله عنده علم الساعة وينزل الغيث ويعلم ما في الأرحام وما تدري نفس ماذا تكسب غدا وما تدري نفس بأي أرض تموت. Allah says in the Quran, إن الله عنده علم الساعة. Allah has knowledge of the hour, meaning the day of judgment. That's the first key. These are the keys of the unseen mentioned in Mafatih al-Ghayb. So this ayah is explained by the other one. إن الله عنده علم الساعة وينزل الغيث, and He sends down the rain. ويعلم ما في الأرحام, and Allah knows that which is in the wombs. Allah knows of what is to be born, and also فمنهم شقي وسعيد, who is going to be the one who is successful and who is the one who is going to be distraught and from the people of hellfire. Allah knows that before the person is even born. ويعلم ما في الأرحام وما تدري نفس ماذا تكسب غدا إن الله عنده علم الساعة وينزل الغيث ويعلم ما في الأرحام وما تدري نفس ماذا تكسب غدا. And a person does not have knowledge of what they will do, what they will earn tomorrow. وما تدري نفس بأي أرض تموت. And a person does not know when, a soul does not know where will they pass away. So these are the 5 things which are mentioned, which only Allah has knowledge of. 1 is the hour, and 2 is وَيُنَزِّلُ الْغَيْثِ, when Allah will send down the rain. And 3, what is in the wombs. And 4, what a person will earn, what they will do in their future. And 5, where they will die and when they will die. These 5 things, only Allah has knowledge of them. And these are from Mafatih al-Ghayb, the keys to the unseen. And al-Ghayb is 2 types. Ghayb, which is mutlaq, unrestricted. That only Allah has knowledge of, except what He reveals to the prophets. And the second type is Ghayb, which is nisbi, which is in relation to a specific thing. So I might know of what Zayd is doing, but you might not know what Zayd is doing. So the action of Zayd is Ghayb, is unknown in regards to you, but it's not unrestrictedly Ghayb. But as for these 5, they are from the unrestricted Ghayb, which no one knows except what Allah has revealed to some of His prophets.
What about people that forecast the rain? I mean,
A forecast is a prediction, and it's not something which is qat'i, which is certain. And it is, like if you see that a car is traveling, and you see this car is driving very recklessly, you can predict that it's going to crash, but you're not certain that it's going to be crashed. And that's why forecasts are often not correct.
What about doctors that can predict the gender of a baby?
So وَيَعْلَمْ مَا فِي الْأَرْحَامِ isn't relating just to the gender. It's relating to this person as a whole. How they will be, what their characteristics are like, what their personality is like, whether they will be a person who is a believer, disbeliever, what their actions will be in the future, whether they will be a person of hellfire or not. All of this is included. So it's not just limited to the gender. So these 5 things, it says, لَا يَعْلَمُهَا إِلَّا هُ. No one has knowledge of it except for him. So anyone who claims to have knowledge of any of these 5 unrestrictedly is a disbeliever. As mentioned by Al-Munawi and other Mufassirin in this ayah, they said, فَمَنِ ادَّعَاهَا فَقَدْ كَفَرْ. Anyone who claims that anyone has knowledge of these 5, even if they claim that the Prophet ﷺ has knowledge of these 5, then this is disbelief. That's why it says in the Quran, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ أَعْلَمُ الْغَيْبَ لَاسْتَكْثَرْتُ مِنَ الْخَيْرِ وَمَا مَسَّنِيَ السُّوءُ. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, for the Prophet ﷺ to say, if I was to know the unseen, I would have made it so that I am always getting good and no harm reaches me, and that I can always do what I want without having any thing preventing me. لَاسْتَكْثَرْتُ مِنَ الْخَيْرِ. I would increase in my goodness, in the good which comes to me. So the Prophet ﷺ did not know the Ghayb, and he did not know these al-mafatih. That's not to say that the Prophet ﷺ cannot have knowledge of some of these things, because that's through revelation. That certain things can be revealed, but encompassing knowledge of the unseen, that's only for Allah Azza wa Jal. Last few ayat, it says, وَقَوْلُهُ مَا تَحْمِلُ مِنْ أُنْثَى وَلَا تَضَعُ إِلَّا بِعِلْمِهِ. And a female does not become pregnant, تحمل, يعني to become pregnant, وَلَا تَضَعُ, nor does she give birth, إِلَّا بِعِلْمِهِ, except by His knowledge. This is also just affirming and emphasizing His complete knowledge, Allah's complete knowledge. And it says, وَقَوْلُهُ لِتَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَحَاطَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا. So that you know that Allah is عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. He is able to do all things. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَحَاطَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا. And that He has encompassed all things in His knowledge. أَحَاطَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا. وَقَوْلُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الرَّزَّاقُ ذُو الْقُوَّةِ الْمَتِينُ. That's relating to another attribute. Inshallah, we'll take that in the next lesson. Wallahu a'lam. If there's any questions, we'll take them now.
When you're talking about hikmah, you said one of the points, there's 2 things coming in, and you said one of them is the ayat, that's the first one. So what was the other one?
Oh yes, so we said al-hikmah, or al-hakim has 3 meanings. Al-hikmah, and al-ihkam, and al-hukm. As for al-hikmah, it has 2 meanings. Al-fi'l al-ghayat, that Allah does things for purposes which are fulfilled through that. That Allah, for example, created us so that we worship Him. And these ghayat are mahmuda, are praiseworthy. So His actions are not done out of abeth, out of just nonsense with no purpose. And the second thing is that it's ربط الأسباب بالمسببات. That Allah He causes, He links between al-asbab, the causes, and al-musabbabat, the effects. Everything which happens in the universe from cause and effect, this effect is caused because Allah has made this an attribute of it. So this is also from His hikmah, from His wisdom, that things have causes and effects. Yeah.
Sorry, also I have one question. Also, for Surah Al-Ikhlas, you said, did you say that, like, I didn't get it right, is it نفي خصائص الخلق عن الله or the other way around?
Two things. نفي خصائص الخلق عن الله, negating the special qualities which are specific to the creation, negating those from Allah, and also the opposite, which is نفي خصائص الله عن الخلق, to negate those attributes which are specific to Allah from the creation. So we negate imperfections which are in the creation from Allah, and we also negate those complete perfections which are specific to Allah from the creation. The creation cannot have the sort of attributes and perfection which Allah has. Yeah? Any more? Okay, then we'll stop here. Allahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad.